For more on that, let's bring in Tony Gosling, historian and investigative journalist, joining us from Bristol. Mr. Gosling, welcome to the program. Donald Trump said after this phone call that the U.S. needs its Tomahawk missiles for itself, which sounded to me like a step back from his earlier stance. Your thoughts on that?
Well, look, Donald Trump's finding this all a bit embarrassing, isn't he? Because he made great claims about stopping this war in 24 hours, and he brought Zelensky over to the White House and told him, you don't have any cards. And I think that's still actually the case, because back on the 22nd of August, Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, announced quietly, although it wasn't all over the Western press, that she was going to stop US intelligence sharing with Ukraine and also with the UK, because they've been sharing intelligence with Britain, who had then been passing it on to Ukraine. So really, Ukraine has lost, but there are all sorts of efforts to try and animate this corpse of the Ukrainian ability to win anything, really. So they can't. They're looking at the casualties. There's lots of different people saying different things about the casualties. My best estimate is that roughly 1.7 million Ukrainians have been killed over the last, 3.5 years in this war since the Russians invaded, and only about 150,000 Russians. Well, it's a lot of people, obviously, but this is it's something like, at least 10 to 1 anyway, possibly more than that. Of the Ukrainians have been dying, 10 for every 1 Russian, more than that. So this is there is no more that the Ukrainians can really do. And what they can do, of course, though, is to twist the arm, and that's what's going to happen tomorrow. They'll try and twist the arm of Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War. Now they're very honest about it in America. It's a war secretary, not a defense secretary. And say, please, please, please. I think the Tomahawks is a bit of a cover, really, for what they really need and what they really want, if they're going to do anything, is the US intelligence, satellite data, etc., in order to find the Russians, so that other Europeans, not Ukrainians, that is the Germans, the British, etc., can use their missiles to hit Russia and hit Russians. And so that's really what's going on here. I mean, the Europeans are lobbying the Americans as well as the Ukrainians in order to try and get Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard to reopen these communications of the targeting information that the Ukrainians need. And I think also there's massive amounts of money, particularly from Germany now, flooding into Ukraine. That doesn't mean to say that they can use that to fight the war specifically, but what they can use is to buy weapons, and also they can buy mercenaries. And so I think that's where this war is going. And there's one specific reason why there's been no peace, and it's not Russia's fault at all. It is the fault of Zelensky, and it's the fault of the Europeans who want to keep this war going. And that is that they're saying they want NATO troops in Ukraine to guarantee a peace. Now, this is not going to happen, because that will actually expand the war, and those NATO soldiers will be killed by Russia if they're brought into Ukraine. So that, I think, is it in a nutshell. And it would be nice if some commentators around the world would just call out this insanity of the idea of bringing in NATO troops into Ukraine to make peace. It won't, it will make war.
Yes, Mr. Gosling, you talked about the lobbies. It's hard to ignore the Israeli side here. Trump says supplying Tomahawks to Ukraine would deplete U.S. stocks for the U.S. itself, yet he didn't seem to have the same concern when it came to Israel draining roughly a quarter of the THAAD missile systems only in 12 days during its war with Iran.
Well, that's because the Christian Zionists in the United States are far more enthusiastic about their Middle East war than they are about Ukraine. And in a way, I wonder whether in Trump's mind he's thinking, well, he promised to stop both wars it might be that now things are calming down in Gaza, aid is getting in, although of course the Israelis are being incredibly belligerent. He may see this as a reason to say, well, at least I've stopped that one, and maybe the other wars will start, such as Venezuela and such as Ukraine. So it may be that the United States will veer towards supporting Ukraine more. But yes, of course, they're very biased. It's all sorts of double standards. The way a civilized nation works, and Britain has in the past actually done this at certain periods, is where you look at the human rights angles on a particular conflict and a particular government regime. Is it a dictatorship? Is it violating human rights, etc.? And you tick the boxes. And if it is, then no arms are exported to that country. So that's what they should be doing. They shouldn't be having these double standards whereby they say, oh, okay, well, maybe we can export those arms to a neighbouring country. You can then pass it through to them. So yes, it's complete double standards, but also I don't think this is really about those Tomahawk missiles so much as intelligence sharing, because that's what Zelensky really needs to start this war up again, take it into the streets of Moscow, which is what he wants to do. He doesn't have the capability without the help of Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, and that's what he desperately is pleading for, because the Europeans actually haven't been able to help so much. The Europeans are also a bit, they don't have as much intelligence gathering capability as the United States does. But Tulsi Gabbard is a key person in all of this. If she opens those intelligence floodgates, then this war will be reignited and go up to a whole new level with European missiles being fired by Europeans into Russia. And that's exactly what Zelensky wants, and it's what the German Chancellor wants, and it's what the British Prime Minister Starmer wants. They want this war.
Exactly. That is my next question, Mr. Gosling. How likely do you think that is, especially if the U.S. resumes its arms transfers? Could this spiral into a much larger confrontation between Europe and, between the EU countries with the help of the U.S. with Russia?
Well, do you know what that means? It really means NATO. It means NATO conflict with Russia. And this is what NATO has been itching for ever since the 1940s and the beginning of the Cold War. So Putin double-crossed the NATO countries back in around about 2000 when he became president. They hoped that he was going to be their puppet, their toy, rather like Yeltsin, the former president in the 1990s, who had been an alcoholic and just handed everything over to these foreign vultures. And but he didn't do that. He played along with them for a few years, and then it became clear Putin is in charge in Russia and the Kremlin is in charge. The oligarchs and the rich are not running the country as they are in the West. And so they've set themselves apart, Russia. And in a way, they are acting right now, I think, as almost like the British were in 1939. They are standing up. In fact, they're almost like a United Nations voice saying we must have a multipolar world. We are not going to have a takeover of Russia by the Europeans or the United States. And the US, I think, is being very sensible, unlike the Europeans, in that they're doing everything they can, as Kissinger advised when he was alive, to avoid a nuclear war. Let's have a settlement, because you cannot pick a fight with a nuclear power like Russia, especially one equipped with hypersonic missiles that can take out any of your cities or military bases at the drop of a hat. This is insanity. This is chaos. But there are some that want chaos. They want to make money from it, and they want to try and control the outcome. We must be aware that these people do not think rationally in Europe, and the Americans are starting to. But whether they hold on to that is anyone's guess. Let's hope to God they do.